So as Kevin mentioned, investing in transformation. Really excited to introduce three awesome speakers. We have Jonathan Shambroom. Jonathan's been a successful operator and investor. He's been in leadership positions at companies like Evite, Sony, Ning, and Zozi. He also founded a company called Zego, a healthy snack company with nutritious energy bars where 20% of the profits are donated to help improve nutrition for low-income children. So I'd love to get some of those whenever you can. He's also now COO and an investor at Launch Capital, a seed-stage venture firm based in a few cities across the country that's been very, very supportive of a lot of Yale companies, which we appreciate. Next up is Will Gaybrick. Will, unfortunately, went to a school up in Cambridge called Harvard, but he made up for it by graduating from Yale Law, where he helped start a very successful and beneficial program called Hack Yale, which is still running very successfully. Will's been both a software engineer at top companies like Hunch. He's now a general partner at Thrive. If you haven't heard of it, Thrive is an incredibly successful venture capital firm. It's been an investor in household names like Artsy, Kickstarter, Warby Parker, Instagram, and Instacart. And Will's also been instrumental in the incubation and funding of some great companies like Oscar and Maple. Dorothy Jean Chang is a leader in both the VC and PR worlds. She was previously a leader at the PR agency Brew Media, and also a PR mentor in residence at Techstars. And she's currently one of the founding partners of the seed fund Liberty City Ventures, which invests in early stage startups in digital media, digital payments, and Bitcoin and blockchain companies. So if everybody would please join me in welcoming Jonathan, Will, and Dorothy.
Hello, this is working, great. Just to point out, Jonathan's on my far left, you're far right, and this is Will. I'm Dorothy, if that wasn't clear. So we've all come into investing from different pathways. Jonathan more product, operational side of things. Will more from an engineering perspective, me more from PR marketing. In my case, my stumble into VC was more of a stumble. It kind of happened organically. I happened to have a few friends who were interested in investing, and we thought about things the same way, and we came together and formed a fund. Can you guys tell us a little bit more about how you ended up in VC?
Go first.
Sure. First, hello, everybody. Thanks for being here. My journey was kind of gradual. As Rich said, I've been in the operational side 20 years in San Francisco at 8 consecutive startups, and I love startups. So the first one's an L for love. I love the DNA of the people that are attracted to startups and the creative process in a technical environment for a business outcome. So everything about startups always really resonated with me. And I found about a decade ago as an angel investor and an advisor that variety was even more fulfilling. And so I really enjoyed starting to work with more companies. And then lastly, leverage. The experiences I've had inside companies, I think they've proven really valuable, sharing the lessons learned, especially the painful ones and the failures, and the playbook with a broad portfolio of companies. So it was, for me, a natural evolution.
So I can't boast 25 years of track record like that.
Because you're only about 25 years old.
Yeah, a little older. My progression was actually more similar to yours, Dorothy. Wandered into investing, out of school, went to Blackstone, and left there to become a software engineer, and was actually in law school at Yale when we started Thrive, which was more or less on a lark, just seeing that a lot of our friends were starting companies and having access to their financings just through our existing relationships, and that honestly just sort of snowballed into raising an institutional fund, and then a couple more after that.
And it's happened very quickly, which is kind of cool, right? Like the fund, you started it in what, 2011 or 12?
Late 2010.
Late 2010. Late 2010. So it's been about 5 years. And you've, as a portfolio, you have how many hundreds of companies?
Well, we started in late 2010 with like a $5 million like quasi-angel fund. We raised our first institutional fund in late 2011, which was $40 million. And then we raised our last fund, which is our third institutional last fall, which is $420 million. And we have had the occasion to invest in about 60 companies total.
60 companies.
Yeah.
And Launch Capital has also been quite prolific.
Well, true. With respect for our elders and largers, we're a little older. 2008 we started, but with a much more modest fund, 15 million. And we have 145 companies in our portfolio. But as a seed stage firm, our typical early investment is 150K, with roughly the same for follow-on. So we're placing a lot of bets, and they're usually small. And then occasionally we'll have some big follow-ons that kind of break that mold.
So just to go back a little bit into your histories a little bit more. So Rich mentioned Will started a organization at Yale called Hack Yale, where students lead courses on various areas of web development. Within the first year or two of this organization, the Yale Daily News said that more Yaleys signed up for Hack Yale classes than have ever graduated from the computer science department in its entire history. Tell us more about this program, why you started it, what were you hoping the impact to be, and what has actually happened?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the amazing part about that quote is that happened in the first 2 weeks of the class. So Hack Yale was actually started in the spring of my 1L year at Yale, and it was started like a very practical exigency, which was that some small number of people in some small group had figured out that I had spent the past 4 years building things, and so I was very frequently propositioned about, hey, can you build this? Can you build this? Can you build this? It's just not very scalable. So decided to start teaching people. So in the spring of, I guess...
So you were just trying to outsource.
Yeah, pretty much, exactly, yeah. So spring of 2010, it was just me and 5 other, mostly undergrads and 1 law school student in a room. And then that summer decided to start institutionalizing it, reached out to a friend named Bay Gross, who is now at Google, and asked him if he wanted to help me out. And we were joined by a third, who's now one of my colleagues at Thrive, Miles Grimshaw, also a Yale undergrad. And we postered in a semi-provocative way. In fact, our poster said, "Where's Yale's Zuckerberg?" Which speaks to actually the motivations of starting it, which was to sort of bootstrap the hacker ecosystem on campus. And we had almost a third of the campus undergrad student body apply to us in 2 weeks that fall.
And in terms of, I guess, lasting impact, can you speak a little bit to where people have gone from that program, and where's the program now today?
Yeah, absolutely. So our proudest moment was actually last fall when Yale finally started offering an Android course, because when we were there, President Levin was pretty excited about what we were doing, and unfortunately, we weren't able to sort of work our curriculum into the broader curriculum of the school, but we were hoping that over time it would migrate in that direction. So I think, very broadly speaking, whatever small part we played in sort of steering the ship towards some more practical technologies, I think that is one part of the legacy we're really proud of. Beyond that, it's still one of the most vibrant, largest student groups on campus, and has minted a lot of great developers that have gone on to work at a lot of Thrive portfolio companies. So it's been a great journey.
Have you found Yale's Zuckerberg?
Not sure.
So Jonathan, you've been on the inside of many different startups and helped see 5 of them through successful exits, which is kind of a ridiculous track record. That's amazing, considering the vast majority of startups are expected to fail. So what do you think has been the common theme there? Has it been, were you convinced that each of these startups, when you joined them, were going to be something big, or was it more about the execution? Was it all you, really? Tell us the truth.
I got lucky. My very first startup, a video game company, early 90s, before the web, based on AI and doing some innovative things, had just some of the best people I've ever worked with, still to this day, the smartest people I know. And I think I got lucky by just having the opportunity to go there. After 4 years, we exited. During that time frame, the web burst onto the scene. But for me, what started there and which was common were two things. One, pioneering or innovating new categories, either as a whole category or as a specific product, often highest risk. But I think that epitomizes the attraction of a certain DNA, people that are trying to turn that dream into reality. But it's really the people. For me, the team is always the starting point and the ending point. And if you can find people that raise your own game, that you're out of your comfort zone. For me, startups require an unreasonable amount of effort. It's something that you can't ask. A manager can't ask it of you or demand it of you. And I find that it's when people want to work, beyond what anybody would expect, because they care about the people they work with and they want to do their part. They don't want to let people down. So when there's that respect and that teamwork, to me, that's where the great things happen. So I always looked for teams and cultures that had that thereafter, and I think I continued to get pretty lucky. I certainly worked hard.
This may be a good segue into how you invest in companies then. You told us how you pick companies you've worked for. Is there a similar theme in terms of how you look at companies you invest in?
Yeah, absolutely. There's an art and a science to that. I'm sure we'll attest to. I think for me, the science is the numbers part. Is the opportunity large enough? All the economics and attributes of it, and then the art is the people side and the kind of the quality that you're going to have to calibrate and evaluate yourself. But there are three things that I look for, in a pitch. First is the reason why does somebody start a company, and I've found by far best results when somebody has a real pain point themselves and they come up with a great solution for it. And then they have just utter conviction to go, make it happen. We'll stop at nothing, completely committed. The universe aligns behind that. Versus people that decide, hey, let's be founders, and we have a solution in search of a problem. I just find a clear pain point and a clear solution at the onset, you're ahead of the game. So that's one thing, the reason for starting it. The second is the DNA of the people, and I call it, I look for business athletes. And they don't have to be athletes beforehand. Sometimes they are, frequently they are, not always. But some of those same qualities in the workplace of the willingness to put in the time to train, to work hard, to prepare, finessing all the details, teamwork and a teamwork mentality, a intense competitive drive, and just leading by example. Less ego and more humility, but hunger. So that's the DNA side, and then the last piece, and I actually think this is the most important, is communication. When somebody pitches, if they can keep it short, you have my attention. I think the ability to express yourself succinctly is it's very indicative of time efficiency, how people make decisions. If you can have a meeting and make a great decision in 10 minutes, not 60, the amount of stuff you can get done as a company and how much people enjoy that is really high. So. Those are some things that might be outside of what we all read about.
Will, I think you have some interesting things here to say as well. So Thrive not only invests in companies, but also starts some. And you've been a co-founder of 2 of the companies that you've started, right? Can you tell us a little bit more about those companies, and then also how you look at starting companies versus how you look at investing them?
Yeah, absolutely. We've now started 3 companies at Thrive. We recently announced the third one, which is a company called Cadre, which is a real estate finance company. The first one, Oscar, which anyone who lives in New York probably knows because we've blanketed the city in advertising, is a health insurance company. And at the time, we weren't explicitly in the business of starting companies. It happened, rather accidentally. And I think what we found is that there's a lot of disadvantages to be doing this when you're in your mid to late 20s or now 30. But one advantage is a lot of the best entrepreneurs are actually your peers. And so we have people in our networks who are unbelievably talented, who have great ideas or are interested in spaces that we're interested in. And we have honestly just tried to empower those people. Has been largely our approach. So with Oscar, we did start the company, but two co-CEOs in the early days, Kevin Azimi and Mario Schlosser, were absolutely instrumental and still are to building that company. With Maple, which coming soon, we went out and pitched David Chang and said, "Hey, David, we think your business could have a better margin structure and could be much more scalable." And he agreed. And we had already teamed up with a guy named Caleb Merkel and Akshay Navle, actually two people that you probably know from Primary. And the three of them have really been going after it together. So for us, particularly as the market gets increasingly inflated from a venture perspective, rates are so low and more money into VC and so on, just going earlier and earlier and earlier has made sense. And we've been very fortunate now to get three great companies off the ground and hopefully more to come.
So those are the companies that you've started. What about the companies that you invest in? What do you look for generally? And is there a common thesis or themes that you look for?
Yeah, this is always the hardest question. And one thing I love about venture is that I've never been part of like a pursuit in my life where the learning curve has remained so steep for so long. Now going on 4.5 years in, sure, that's not very long, but you start usually to feel like you get the hang of something when you do it 24 hours a day for 4.5 years. And with venture, I think it takes a long time to really know if you're doing it right. So in the early days, it wasn't really so much like what to invest in, it was what not to invest in. And we'd take these pitches, and people would come in with these ideas that were so cool and so innovative, and I would like call up a friend at another firm and say, "Hey, did you meet this guy? What he's doing seems so cool." He'd be like, "Oh yeah, we passed a long time ago." And it's like, "How did you pass on that? Like that was so cool." And you slowly learn that there's like certain things that you have to really hone in on. So for us, it's sort of projecting opportunities into broadly like a 5-dimensional space that we sort of use to qualify things, which is, we like businesses with deep moats, big market sizes. We look for amazing managers, and you named a lot of great criteria for those managers. We look for really good margin structures because otherwise it's going to require way too much capital to build those businesses. And then the last one, which you mentioned in almost a different way, which was the motivation of the entrepreneur, is the motivation of the market, which is like the why now of the business. And if you can't point to one, there's usually a reason for that. And when you hear people say, "Oh, mobile's huge," what they're really saying is that mobile is like, the enabling technology of so many new companies that couldn't have existed before. So mobile has been like one of the great why nows the past 5 years, and many more to come. So those are the 5 that we look for.
You mentioned that part of the learning curve for you has been learning what not to invest in. Is there such a thing as an easy no? Are there red flags that kind of make you go, no way, for both of you?
Yes.
Can you share more?
Yeah. I think if you on some of the things that Will said, if there's not a clearly defined audience, that's a no. If there's not enough differentiation, like is your offering, is your product or service better and different by enough? That's, it's not a no. If, it's like, is the opportunity real? Can you win? And is it worth it? So that's another interesting dimension, which is, let's say you succeed. Does this business, make sense? Like, do your expenses scale along with your revenues no matter how big you get? That's not that interesting. So, there's a lot of just the business fundamentals that people get passionate about an idea, and it can be a great idea, and sometimes even a great feature or product, but not always a great business.
Yeah, I think, sorry about that. I think those are great points. And, I guess I don't have too much to add in terms of why we say no, but actually why we're sort of reticent to say no too quickly a lot of times, which is you think about one of my favorite quotes about ventures, the Mike Moritz quote about bird watching. And he talks about how he doesn't bet on flocks, he bets on birds. He also doesn't redline neighborhoods, and he's looking for, as he puts it, an interestingly complected bird. And I think that it's just always something very important to keep in mind because, one easy answer would be we don't bet on small markets. But there's like endogeneity between business models and innovation and market size. And so, a lot of people have looked at Uber's recent valuations, and I'm not going to comment on like too high or too low or whatever, but they will point to the global taxi market and say, how can you possibly justify this valuation given that whatever, it's $100 billion spent total. But then you look at Uber in San Francisco and you say it's actually grown the market significantly. And so if you had said Uber's a black car service, you would have missed it. And if you had instead said Uber is going to be the urban transportation layer of the next 50 years, you would think about it very differently. So I guess for us, we only say no if there's really red flags about people, and we're very big on humility. So that's probably one thing that rubs us really wrong is when we get people coming in and there's not really a personality fit. That being said, there have been some great CEOs who aren't necessarily people who'd be your best friends. So I think we always try to keep an open mind.
Have you ever heard of a Harvard grad talking about humility like that?
Yale grad too.
I'm just teasing. Okay, so the topic of our panel is really investing in transformation, right? So let's talk about some bigger, broader themes that we like and are interested in. For Liberty City Ventures, my fund, as Rich mentioned, part of what we invest in is Bitcoin and blockchain technologies. We think there's a lot of potential there, not just for Bitcoin as a digital currency, but all the different ways that the blockchain can be used for information authentication, contracts and ownership rights and things like that. What areas get you guys excited right now? What do you think is coming in the future that's going to be really big that you want to pour a lot of money into?
Sure. We've done a lot of stuff in sort of on-demand services, and I guess that would broadly be Maple, Instacart, and Oscar, actually. It's sort of an unsung part of Oscar is Teladoc and being able to get a doctor on the phone in just seconds. A lot of interesting stuff continuing to happen there. I'm personally really interested in sort of the advent of much cheaper and more flexible AI and machine-augmented intelligence. Seeing a lot of really cool companies in that space these days. There's sort of broadly two ways people are coming at it. One is sort of AI as a service, which is like cheap, like scalable IQ from machines. And most entrepreneurs going after that are taking, maybe a family of related problems or applications and going sort of, B2D, business to developer, and saying, hey, why don't you take our infrastructure and layer it into the fabric of your apps to enhance them. And then, perhaps even more interesting, we're seeing a lot of really cool point solutions. So companies that are taking a very sort of deep learning approach to solving a specific problem. And one really cool one is calendaring and sort of rote administrative tasks. So a couple of companies, one here in New York called X.AI. It's a really cool company, and another called Clara Labs out west. Both great products. We've use both of them at Thrive. You know, we are seeing a lot in medical diagnostics, and you know, there's like one theory that, you know, within the next 10 years, who knows, maybe 5 years, so like a lot of diagnosis will just happen entirely at home via home diagnostics tools, and then just data and computation. And I'd love to see even more in the space. I mean, I was at the office till like 2 a.m. last night, modeling out what hopefully will be the next 5 years for a company that we just put a term sheet in on, and I don't know why I'm still building that model, right? There is so much data that is cataloged on so many machines about so many companies that are relevant to it, and you know, there should be a way to sort of like interpolate among all of the outcomes that have happened and produce something that I couldn't produce in, you know, a month's work in just a few seconds. So I think about so many ways in which like I can be made obsolete, or I can, you know, at least be made smarter, one or the other. One sounds better than the other. You know, I'm really excited to see where it all goes.
Awesome. I like all that stuff. I think there are two things I'll speak about that Launch Capital has played a lot in and that we look for. One, we internally call unsexy industries, and how data and technology are helping transform and just modernize industries that are critical, which could be food production, it could be agriculture, it could be waste, it could be you know, things in, you know, supply chains that you know, haven't been modernized, and simply the awareness and efficiency, and sometimes AI, but usually it's just analytics can bring so much to the table. We have a company called Series Imaging of, you know, aerial photography that helps farmers know where water is needed, you know, where's nitrogen concentrated, to be smarter with their resources. Important in California right now. You know, we have similar monitoring technology platforms, you know, in landfill and waste. A company called Compology that can detect methane detection. And the old world, you know, pockets are few and far between, but usually there's a lot of benefit when they, you know, kind of get the gospel of data. So that's one. And then another is, and personally, my own, you know, thesis includes things that make the world a better place. You know, whether it's healthy lifestyle and embedded technology, which could be wearables, it just could be, you know, data and technology where it's actionable, and it's not data for data's sake. I heard that in the last session, but there are things that can keep you safer, make you healthier, save you time. I love those things, and you know, so we have several companies in that sphere, or even just innovative uses of things like solar. You know, we have a company called Empowered that is an inflatable solar paneled LED lantern. It's a, you know, it comes as a disc, you inflate it, and it's the coolest light. And when I saw it, I'm a product guy. I felt it, I touched it, I'm like, this is awesome. I championed it, you know, we invested, and it's going great. It's an amazing company for not just as a commercial success, it happens to be a B Corp, benefits corporation, and, you know, a great mission to help disaster relief, developing countries with, you know, light, critical resource. So. Or
even camping. I have one.
Oh, good. Didn't know.
All right, I think that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for joining us. Listening in.